All right, first in pod, you know the drill. Subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend, 5 stars, spread the gospel of this pod in the offseason. We are doing part 2, big storylines per division, one in each. So all 32 teams are considered. It could be a macro, it could be a micro. I'm handling the NFC. You are handling the AFC. Would you like to go first, Mr. Fillipponi?
Yes, and none of these were created by me. This is all Spencer. He did so good last week with his division picks for you with the 2 divisions he came up with.
Some of the best questions I've ever heard.
Yes, we just entrusted him to do all 8 for this week. Let's start with the AFC South. Trevor Lawrence got that big deal on Friday. And we're talking about money that's very similar to the top of the line. It's a better contract from guaranteed money standpoint. Well, from not guaranteed money, but an annual salary than Mahomes. So he is now in that stratosphere of the great quarterbacks annual salary wise. Despite having just really one good year as a quarterback to this point, your thoughts on Jacksonville giving Trevor Lawrence a 5-year, $275 million deal?
This is the price of business. There was no other option. The cap keeps going up, so the contracts will keep going up. And I think the debate over this stuff is largely silly because if you have a guy that you believe is good enough that you can win with, they always get paid 100% of the time. That's how it works. Now, you want to win, you want to have a guy that you win because of, not that you just win with. But teams are so afraid, I would argue correctly, of going from Kirk Cousins to Josh Dobbs or going from, Matt Ryan to Desmond Ridder. Like, we know what it looks like when teams have no shot to win anything of substance because of the guy under center. And Trevor Lawrence gives you a shot to win with and because of the guy under center, so you pay him. The only time I think it's even a legitimate question is in a situation like Miami, where you've got to have an honest conversation with Mike McDaniel. The owner has to close the door, and it's got to be the 2 of them in the room, and you got to say, okay, Mike, you're the offensive genius. Can you get 95% of Tua's production for 20% of the cost, and then we could spend that money elsewhere? Like, are you Kyle Shanahan level good? And if the answer is any degree of doubt, you pay Tua, because the alternative is Skylar Thompson or someone that we know is just an absolute zero. So you want to pay the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. Not everybody can. And that's why the top 15 quarterbacks in the NFL make massive money.
The discussion here, though, is him getting paid like he has entered that fraternity of the best quarterbacks.
But it's just
guys getting second contract
when he signs the contract. If he would have signed this contract 2 years ago, it would have aged out, like proportion to the salary cap.
Okay, fair enough. But if Derek Carr were up for a contract right now, he would not be able to use Trevor Lawrence and say, that's 5 years, 275. I deserve 280.
He's much older.
But the fact that Trevor Lawrence was able to just basically go by what Burrow and Herbert got and make that kind of money and get paid like that is what has caused so much consternation amongst NFL fans and media. I get it. Like, to me, he's still largely, even though we have freaked out on this podcast, specifically you, but also me, about red zone turnovers and things not being right with him consistently.
Crazy fumble problems. Yes.
All of those things. Yes. I still, to what you just said about Miami, if I had to make a bet on a quarterback over the next 5 years, I would take Trevor Lawrence over Tua, even though Tua's production is much better than Trevor Lawrence. We were doing this on our show last week in Pittsburgh. Like, it's amazing how much the pedigree and what we thought of these players coming out of college still affect our overall viewpoint of them. Case in point, would you take the next 5 years of Jalen Hurts over the next 5 years of Trevor Lawrence?
No.
Me neither. And in terms of what they've done in the NFL, there's nothing.
No debate.
There's no empirical argument to be made that it's Lawrence over
part
Hurts.
of that specific one is will Jalen Hurts' style of play age well? And have we already seen the best of Hurts because it's so dependent on athleticism and physicality, and that gets worse as you age, whereas Trevor Lawrence should age like a fine wine as a passer and as he gets more stability around him in the NFL. I thought you were going to say Brock Purdy because, the one that's going to mess people up is when Brock Purdy, if he has another massive year, gets $60 million a year. But that's what I would do again. If I'm San Francisco, I'd lock Kyle Shanahan in a room and be like, hey man, be honest with me. Are you is this guy the difference maker or is he just better than Jimmy Garoppolo? Because if you can get this level of production and you just need better than Jimmy Garoppolo, we can find that for cheaper than resetting the quarterback market. So with the true offensive geniuses, I understand the debate a little bit. With Dak Prescott and Jared Goff and Kirk Cousins and those guys, it's like, of course you pay them. I don't think it's much of a debate. All right, let's keep it moving as we go through the divisions here. I know you've been talking about this a lot in Pittsburgh because the Steelers are one of the hot rumored destinations, but I'm going NFC West here. Brandon Aiyuk puts out that cryptic video. It now feels more like a matter of when, not if, he gets traded. He was quoted as saying to Jaden Daniels, they don't want me back. What would you give up for Brandon Aiyuk? What would you pay him? Where should he go?
Well, he should come to the Steelers. They have $15 million in cap space right now that they can get even more room through restructures, and they have $78 million in cap space for 2025. They have the highest paid defense in the NFL and the second cheapest offense in the league behind Green Bay, and they don't have. Green Bay has multiple good young wide receivers. The Steelers only have one. They have a gulf between George Pickens and everybody else on the roster. Roman Wilson, who they drafted in the 3rd round, I think will have a nice career, but he's nowhere close to the type of player that Aiyuk is. I would give up, for sure, I would give up a second and a third to get him. And you could twist my arm and talk me into a 1st-round pick because really I think I would boil it down to this. If Brandon Aiyuk was in this year's draft, even with a $30 million a year cap hit, and I had the 16th or 17th pick, would I want a rookie player or would I want Brandon Aiyuk? And I would prefer to have the wide receiver who was 2nd in the league in yards per catch last year, and I think 4th in touchdowns. And we saw him make the play against the Lions off the helmet. I think he is yes, a little bit of a creation of their offense, and that's partly why Shanahan doesn't want to pay him close to Jefferson money, Amon-Ra St. Brown money. But even with all the wide receivers that are coming out of college now, I would prefer to have him in the Steelers offense with George Pickens, and I would give up a 1st-round pick for him.
Giving up 1st-round picks to guys you have to immediately pay is a win-now move. So you've got to be convinced that you're ready to win now if you're doing that, which is why I think some of the trade teams are a little confusing. People keep talking about the Patriots, that they have the money, but I don't understand why they would do that.
Well, if it didn't require a 1st-round pick, I would absolutely understand.
Yeah, I know. That's what I said. That's what I said.
Okay.
No. If it's a 2nd or a 3rd-round pick or a 2nd and a 3rd-round pick, I think the list of teams opens up a lot. But 1st-round pick and money, to me, suggests more of a win now situation. So, yes, if it's a 2nd and a 3rd-round pick, of course, the Cardinals make sense, or the Patriots make sense, or teams that have a ton of cap space this year that could throw money at the problem. What about the Chargers?
Yes, I actually think they make the most sense.
Yes,
if I was not putting my own bias and selfishness and desires yes, you have a wide receiver issue there where who Palmer's their number one guy right now. They have a ton of cap space, and you could pair Herbert with Aiyuk, and they would be, I think, fantastic over the next 5 years together, maybe even longer. The issue I see with the move is it just doesn't seem like something Jim Harbaugh wants to do when building his football team. He seems like he's very old school and wants to do it the build through the draft, build a physical team, no shortcuts to winning. That's always been his MO. And I just don't see that evolving because it's been such a successful strategy for him everywhere he's been, Danny.
I agree. But the football part makes sense.
Yes, of course.
He's better. Listen, he'd make every team in the NFL better, but Herbert needs him. The ages line up a bit. Obviously, Keenan Allen has been incredibly productive, but all of a sudden the Chargers could be like, yeah, we lost Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, but we got an elite offensive lineman in theory. I know you have your questions, but an elite offensive lineman and an elite coach and an elite receiver. Did they even really take a step back? Like they could lose Eckler, Williams, and Allen and make the argument that because of coach, Aiyuk, and tackle, that they have no expectation of the offense taking a step back. So I think the football side of that one makes the most sense. What's next?
AFC North. This entire division is going to be on this dopey in-season Hard Knock show, which they sell as like, if you think our training camp preseason version of Hard Knocks takes you behind the scenes, we'll wait till we take you there when the games really count. And yet I've never watched a single episode of it. And now the entire division is there. So there's cameras in 4 different NFL cities. Can you recall much content that has ever come out of this, award-winning show, which everyone touts during August as like this must-watch thing with the Jets and the Lions before that? They do it in season. They've done it with teams like the Cardinals and Dolphins. And I feel like very little content, Colts too, very little content has come out of these shows. They oversell and they underdeliver it big time.
This is very simple. In August, we crave football content. In the middle of the season, we are overloaded with football content.
We're busy watching the games.
Correct. So this is very simple. It's very simple because even August Hard Knocks has been very watered down and repetitive.
Well, then I think there's a solution here, actually. What they should do is they should roll on it the entire – I don't know. I think they said it starts in December. They should roll on it the last 2 months of the season, and they should release it after the season is over. That way,
NFL Films recap things that we had back in the day.
Well, I'm saying make it like the quarterback documentary series. And if it's late February and the season is over, and now they're going to maybe show some of the, now at that point, the disagreements or the arguments or the awkward moments, it's not something that is going to like be brought up to the coach or the player 3 days later at a press conference. All that's done and over with. So I think you could even make it more of an uncensored, real looking show. And to your point, I think the quarterback series proved that people wanted to watch that type of take you behind the curtains content once football season was over. That's what I would do.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it is. I mean, did you ever? I'm sure you did. Of course you did. How NFL Films would do those 30-minute recaps of every team's season with all the.
Yes, I love those. But this is supposed to be.
I know.
An access show, not the story of the 1998 Bengals was a series of close and gut-punching defeats.
But those shows were amazing because they could make 5 and 11 teams seem compelling because we were watching it after the fact. Like we knew the result of the game. We knew the team was bad, but we were like, it's this or baseball. I'm in on this. All right. Another story of where is a star player going to play. Where are you betting right now on where Dak Prescott, we'll do NFC North here, where Dak Prescott plays football in 2025?
You mean NFC East?
What did I say?
North, I think. You've
I
got the
said
North
north.
on the brain.
Obviously, I meant east. Yeah, it's more of an east
I
thing than a
think
north thing, even though they're in the center of the country.
I think overwhelmingly it's Dallas next year. I don't really think that there's a team that I could come on here and say makes a ton of sense as the Dak Prescott destination that's not the Cowboys currently. The Raiders, maybe?
I mean, well, our buddy Nick Wright, number one First and Pod fan, has floated the idea of Belichick and Dak package deal to the Giants, which is very fun. Probably not based in any reality other than it would be an incredible storyline.
Well, he's on retainer from the Cowboys. That was my
that was your theory.
That was my theory. Well, he didn't like that one?
Oh, I don't know if he liked that. He shouted out one of your theories recently, your Sean McDermott, Robert Saleh press conference point. He shouted that out on TV the other day. So
thank you.
He's still taking our takes with some credit. No, he called you friend of the show, Andrew Fillipponi. He said it was great. Bruin Wilds loved it also. So listen, man, I agree with you. The odds say it's Dallas. It should be Dallas. I don't know why they're messing around with this. It's just costing them money. Dak Prescott has more leverage than any player in the NFL, including Patrick Mahomes probably, because Mahomes is actually under contract. Now, Mahomes could get anything he wanted whenever he wanted, but that's a happy marriage. This one, what we don't know yet is Dak pissed? Because he's not playing it like he's pissed. He's playing it like a businessman. We're far apart. I know I have leverage. I'm focused on winning. So Dak's not playing it like he's pissed. But wouldn't you be? I'd be pissed if I just had the best season of my life and we've won 12 games 3 years in a row, and guys that I believe I am objectively better than, Trevor Lawrence, Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff, all got paid, and those teams were sprinting to pay them. And those guys are various draft positions, various ages, same team, new team. Like they run the gamut of reasons to pay or not to pay quarterbacks. Dak Prescott's got to be looking around like, what do I have to do to get a little respect? It's
an interesting take. I think I would be bothered if the guys who I thought were in the same boat as me, meaning with the Cowboys, got contract extensions and I didn't. So if Mike McCarthy got a pat on the back for the double-digit win seasons and the game against Green Bay was ignored,
right? He was none of them have been paid, to your point,
right? So that I feel like would be a double standard.
But those guys can't leave.
Okay, but listen, I know that, but if I was being honest with myself, and I might not be in this situation because I could, use the coping mechanisms or the rationalizations that you just pointed out. If I was being honest with myself, I would think, well, yeah, I was really good in the regular season last year, but I sucked in the biggest game. And it wasn't like it was the Super Bowl. It was the wild card round against the last team that got into the playoffs. So if this organization does not want to treat me like a franchise quarterback because of that game, well, I'm either going to prove it to them this year, or then someone else will just pay me and I'll get a fresh start in a new chapter and I'll get $170 million guaranteed or whatever it is from somebody else. That's how I would view it. Let me just give you a scenario that gets him to the Steelers, because I do think it exists. If Russell Wilson and Justin Fields both have poor years, then they're without a quarterback again.
Yep.
And I don't think that a poor season for them means they go 5-12. We know it never does with Tomlin. The ceiling is the floor, as you've mentioned. Their best is also their worst. So they're like an 8 or 9 win team. They're stuck in that purgatory, that horrible middle that the late Jerry West said is the last place in professional sports you ever want to be. This is also not a great draft for quarterbacks unless something changes, which it could this year. If it does, then again, it's going to be a place where you need to be in the top 3 or top 5 to get that guy. I know for a fact that Kevin Colbert and Mike Tomlin really liked Dak Prescott out of Mississippi State and were trying to draft him in the middle rounds as a potential Ben Roethlisberger replacement. I can also tell you why that didn't happen. Because Dak had an alleged driving under the influence charge from when he was at Mississippi State. And as crazy as this sounds, I know the owner of the team did not want to draft somebody who was not considered a can't miss prospect with that kind of incident on his resume. So that's why Dak Prescott wasn't a Steelers pick in the third round of that draft. And obviously he's done so much since then that there's not a character question whatsoever now. But I think Mike Tomlin has always respected him and liked him as a player. So just file that away in case the worst case scenario plays out with this football team this year.
I think the Steelers make a ton of sense for a next destination for him if he actually gets to that point. But we're both in agreement then. Overwhelming likelihood is Dallas. What's your
yes,
next
and I will hate myself watching him play quarterback if he does come to the Steelers. All right. AFC East. The Brady stuff. We've got Brady retirement ceremony at Gillette Stadium in front of 50,000 fans. We've got Giselle breaking up with the jiu-jitsu instructor because the instructor hated the criticism and publicity that came with the roast. We have Brady jumping into the XFL championship and getting up there on the
UFL.
What did I say? XFL?
Yeah.
Getting up there and handing out the MVP award afterwards to a guy that threw for under 100 yards. It was such a terrible game. We also have Bill Belichick dating a 24-year-old. So there's a lot of different places we can take this, Danny. I will allow for you, dealers. I guess it's not dealer's choice. I will allow for you to pick from this potpourri of Brady Patriots topics.
I will pass on the jiu-jitsu instructor. I will laugh at all of the jokes on the internet of imagine being the father of a 22-year-old daughter because they were 22 allegedly when they started dating and talking, and you bring home the boyfriend and it was Bill Belichick. I got to admit.
That would be like my daughter bringing home Mike Tomlin in 20 years.
Right. And your daughter's one?
Yes. Not yet, but close.
Yeah, almost one. Yeah. Though I will admit that all of those jokes on the internet made me deeply uncomfortable, but I also laughed at them. Like, does the father call him coach? Is there a sign of respect? Do you have to beat him up? Those things were very funny to me. The most interesting thing here was the Brady broadcast debut in the UFL. I think he's going to be good. And I've thought he was going to be good for a while. He is preparing for this in a way that surprises me. There was a time when I thought he was never even going to do this when he delayed it a year. Why would he be interested in traveling to Cleveland and Atlanta and Jacksonville just because they happen to have the game? I was like, if he could only call the Super Bowl, if he could work periodically, fine. But this guy is apparently grinding sessions on the Fox lot, blowing up Kevin Burkhart's phone, genuinely caring about this whole thing. It surprises me. And like it or not, celebrity matters. And when he says something, if Greg Olsen said the exact same thing, it carries more gravitas when it comes from Tom Brady. It just does. So I am very intrigued by his broadcast debut. And I think he's going to be good because he's putting in more work than I expected him to put into it.
I don't think he'll be good at first. I think he will be too wooden and rigid. I think there's a difference between him talking. With someone on a podcast or an interview where he's kind of shooting from the hip and he's in front of a camera like we are right now, and the lights really aren't on him and not everyone is watching him. I think that I think this might be him going to the other end of the spectrum. And in terms of extremes, you have Romo on one end who never prepares. And then you have a guy that I think sounds like he's going to be over preparing, and he's going to want to get off opinions and say things about the work that he did going into the game, and maybe less so reacting and analyzing to the game in the moment. And that's why I think Peyton Manning is the perfect combination of those things. I wish that Manning, instead of, having this own production company and doing his show from his basement, I wish he would have actually just gone the route that Brady was, and someone paid him $30 million to do games the way they've always been done. Because I think he would have potential to give John Madden a run for his money and be the best who ever did it. Instead, he wants to do the thing with his brother and not have a play-by-play guy and bring on celebrities and ex-players, and that's fine. But there's a reason why way more people watch the standard traditional broadcast than watch the Manning cast. So I think it's going to be just like Brady's career. I would not be surprised if it got off to a very rocky start. In media, critics were saying things like, we miss Greg Olsen on these games. But by the end of the year, we were thinking he was much better. But I think he'll be stiff, and I think he'll try to get off way too many takes and opinions on things that he prepped for rather than what's happening in the game.
Totally reasonable. Totally reasonable. The Eagles were not fined or punished with a draft pick loss for tampering. The Atlanta Falcons, for Kirk Cousins, most notably, but also Darnell Mooney and Charlie Warner, the tight end, fined $250,000. Terry Fontenot, their GM, fined $50,000, and the team forfeited a 5th-round pick. They apparently talked to these guys early, introduced Cousins to PR people, training people. Like he was a Falcon before he was allowed to be a Falcon. And he talked about it at his press conference and basically told on himself, which is what triggered the investigation. My reaction to this when I saw this story was, you got a $180 million quarterback and you locked that in, and it cost you $250K and a 5th-round pick. Every team in the NFL would do it. And if Dak Prescott actually goes into this year without a contract extension, what the hell is stopping your Pittsburgh Steelers?
Right.
I
agree.
They say they found, because they were investigating 2 teams. With one team, they didn't find the evidence. With the other team, they did. And so the punishment for it
is a day 3 pick. I feel the same exact way as you. I don't think it curbs behavior whatsoever. I think it actually does the opposite. It encourages it now. If this is the precedent that gets set, it's outrageous to me that Miami swung and missed on Brady, and they got docked harsher punishment, and they gave up a bigger pick than Atlanta did for actually executing it and pulling it off, and the tampering assisting the big move. Whereas with Miami, it just never came to fruition. But there was a bigger name player involved, and that's probably why the NFL used an iron fist in that situation. My take on this is that tampering in all sports should not exist. There should be no punishment for tampering. Tampering should be legalized. It should be allowed because we know it's happening everywhere. That is the whole point of players having agents. General managers should be allowed to communicate with the player's representation at all times. An hour before kickoff, during the game, when the season ends, it shouldn't matter. I really have never heard a strong argument for why it shouldn't be done that way, other than, well, we've always done it this way, or, other teams get mad when their players get talked to by other organizations, when frankly, it's not even the player who's being contacted. It's the guy who is getting paid millions of dollars to be the middleman and be the businessman for the player. So why can't we have this at all times, Danny? I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, the argument is they have a contract. That's the argument. I agree with you, though. The thing is, we all know it happens. this feels
They're not
like
talking to the person who has a contract. They're talking to the agent. They're going over hypotheticals and that type of thing.
well,
Obviously they can't make a real job offer because the player is under contract.
Yeah, but Kirk Cousins said that he met the training staff and the PR staff and all of that. So they did talk to the player.
But he didn't have a contract in that situation.
Oh, yeah, he's a free agent. Yes.
Right. So who cares?
I agree. And by the way, I agree with you, man. We're pro labor, right? Like, we have contracts. I have an agent. It's like, okay, I can't talk to another radio station, but what are you going to do? My agent can. You know what I mean? So like, it's a very silly thing, and we're striking down non-compete levels or non-compete laws at a federal level. So yes, I agree with you. It's very silly.
As soon as the season is over, these guys should be allowed to be wined and dined and go and meet with whoever they want. Now, if you're telling me that like in season, you want to find someone or dock somebody pay because, say, the Cowboys are in Philadelphia and the Saturday night before a game, there's like a surreptitious meeting where Dak Prescott meets with Howie Roseman. Okay, that I agree with. Like, that is the type of, like, that would be the textbook tampering that I would want something on the books to say, you're under contract, you're playing this team tomorrow, and you're meeting with them the night before to talk about next year's deal. But if the agent wants to do that, I don't see anything wrong with that.
Yeah, or I mean, in like an integrity of the game situation in that hypothetical, to like, I know I'm going to sign with you next year, so I'll throw this game and help you out. Or yeah, you don't want that. But
that's not tampering. I mean, that's something completely different. Like,
I'm just saying the act of the conversation. But why this one surprised me so much was because it's like, why do it? Why do it? Like, you're saying it's bad, you're saying it's illegal, but you're saying the punishment is.
Yeah, this is not even a slap on the wrist.
It's not. It's a ticket for jaywalking. It's really, really dumb.
AFC West. I want to just ask you this question about the Chiefs. They got their Super Bowl rings. If Danny Parkins won the Super Bowl, how often would he wear the Super Bowl ring? Would it be a special occasion thing? Would it be a once a year thing? Would it be on the anniversary of winning the game? Would you want to flaunt it at all times? Would you want to keep it in a protected area so it couldn't have any kind of imperfections or anything happen to it? Like, what would be your strategy with something that you earned, but at the same time,
you're
it's kind of gaudy and
player,
not really easy to wear?
You're saying if I was a player, right? Not like a broadcaster or support staff. Okay.
Yes.
I would only at team functions for that team. Like, so like, if I was Mahomes and I showed up to a Wednesday media session in week 6 next year, it would be completely ridiculous if he was wearing last year's Super Bowl ring. Like, focus on the task at hand. But if you're honoring the 2023 Chiefs, you wear it to that. But these things are so big and so gaudy and so completely over the top that they've ceased being functional. I'm friends with Dave Wanstedt. He comes in.
Congratulations on all your success. Tell him I said hi.
Listen, you name drop, and I was talking to this person, so I'm going to do it for once. This guy, Super Bowl rings with the Cowboys, championships at the U, Big East at Pitt. Like, this guy's got a
golf courses, things of that nature.
Yeah, he's got a lot of rings that he can wear. But one of the rings that he wears all the time, it's sensible. It looks like a normal ring that a man would wear. A little bit of gold, one diamond in the middle. It's totally fine. If Travis Kelce wore that Super Bowl ring out for like a dinner with Taylor Swift, it would be completely ridiculous. Like, it's so big and over the top. So I would never wear it unless it was to a team function.
So there was a guy who I believe still works for the Steelers, but in a much reduced capacity now, who got Super Bowl 40 and Super Bowl 43 rings as a member of their website, as a writer for their website. And he would wear these rings to games. He would, so not playoff games or Super Bowls.
Yeah.
The Steelers would be playing a week 5 game in Miami, and he would be in the press box with a Super Bowl 40 and Super Bowl 43 ring on. And I found that whole thing to be very laughable. I thought that was ridiculous.
Mark Grody was the fifth inning guy and pre and post for the Cubs radio broadcast. Buddy of mine, our Bears reporter now. So he got a ring for the 2016 Cubs. And I was just like, you didn't deserve one.
I agree.
They're like, oh, it's so nice that, yeah, it is nice, but it's completely ridiculous. Like, you're going to wear a World Series ring for a team you weren't on? That's just crazy to me. And the pre and post guy, I mean, I love Grody. He's a good friend of mine, but I was just made fun of him for it all the time. But in his situation, too, as like a single guy, it is a great dating profile picture. Like,
but he's also into cats.
He does have a cat. Yeah. No, that would not be.
I don't think that the Super Bowl, I don't think that the World Series ring, the first in over 100 years there, for as cool as that looks, and maybe it's an icebreaker, and maybe women for a split second think maybe he's making a lot of money as an executive or an analyst for the Cubs. When they realize he's just a reporter and that he has a house full of cats, the ring ceases to be.
I will not stand for this Mark Grody slander. He is a great man. He just did not deserve that World Series ring, and I believe it is one cat. But
he's a cat guy.
I would flaunt it on the old dating profile if I had such a thing. What do you believe is real about this JJ McCarthy is not the starter at quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings?
I think a lot of it is real. I buy into it for sure because there remains a fascination with Sam Darnold. And I kept trying to make it happen last year, thinking that there were scenarios in which Brock Purdy would get benched and Sam Darnold would play. But there's a reason why somebody like Dan Orlovsky will go on TV and talk about how if Darnold went in and played for the 49ers, their offense wouldn't have missed a beat or skipped a beat last year. There's a reason why, like, Chris Sims has him high up in his quarterback rankings every year. He has, I think, from a arm talent perspective, he can make every throw. And I think that there's a little bit of, the guy has just been beaten up by bad situations like the Jets and then Carolina. And I think that the quarterback whisperers out there believe that if they get their hands on this guy, they can make him into like a Baker Mayfield last year in Tampa Bay or a Geno Smith in Seattle. So I think that's what Kevin O'Connell is going to do first. I mean, it's not a long-term deal and it's not a ton of money. It's good money for a backup. But I think he wants to see where this goes. And I also think that they see Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City and Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay and Jordan Love in Green Bay. And they're going to try that model until Sam Darnold gives them a reason to, screw that plan and go with the rookie quarterback like most teams do.
Wow. So you believe that Sam Darnold is going to start a significant number of regular season games for the Vikings?
Wow. I do. I really do.
I mean, that is going against the grain. Like those, like you mentioned Mahomes and the Packers and all that. That's for Alex Smith, who had won double-digit games 3 years in a row. That's for Hall of Famer Aaron Rodgers. It's not, you don't normally draft the top 10 pick quarterback and then sit him for a year behind the 1 year flyer journeyman. So,
Carson Palmer did that with John Kitna. I mean, that's going way back. And
that's not exactly a precedent-setting thing.
No, that would be a journeyman example, though, where he played over a top guy. I would make a bet right now that unless there's an injury, Sam Darnold starts more than 10 games for the Vikings this year.
Filled.
What?
Yeah, you're filled. Yeah, I'll fill you on that. Yeah, let's do it.
Now you're using that is that betting lingo, or is that what kids are saying now?
No, it's a trading term. So you put
I'm not capping on this one, Danny. I really think that he'll play.
No, I'm not. It's not a hip kid term, you jerk. I guess it is like a smug finance.
And by the way, one quick aside, going back to what we were talking about before with Grody, when I put my dating profile out there, I just used all the pictures I could find of me on TV. There were no natural Andrew Phillip. My wife could come in here and vouch for that.
I believe it.
It was just my headshots from TV.
Yeah, of course. Of course. It's when you look the best and it's impressive and it's a good conversation starter. Of course.
Very, and maybe borderline narcissistic, but it worked.
You could remove the maybe or the borderline to help that sentence. Thank you to Spencer Ray, our terrific producer. Tell a friend. It's First and Pod. Peace.